Hey everyone, this video is going to be a dual game commentary with a comparison at the end. The two games that I'll be discussing today are Defense Grid: The Awakening and Dungeon Defenders. Both of these games belong to the TD or Tower Defense genre. For those of you that are unfamiliar with tower defense games, I'll briefly cover the history and gameplay style, and then get into the reviews themselves. Alright, let's look at some history. Before tower defense games existed, games like the 1983 Bokosuka Wars had the player attack an enemy castle and avoid towers rather than defending it. In the early 90s, Atari Games released the title Rampart, a game that featured shooting at attacking ships as well as castle building and repair. It wasn't about until the year 2000 games such as Warcraft 3 had custom maps that allowed players to make and play unique real-time strategy creations. One popular game type was, you guessed it, tower defense. These custom games featured waves of enemies that must be stopped before reaching an endpoint. And typically the games allowed players to work together to stop the enemy mobs from reaching the point itself. Letting creatures past your defense was often referred to as leaking. But most TD games cut the player some slack by giving them a number of chances or lives before actually losing the game. The popularity of these custom games caused independent developers to create hundreds of standalone tower defense games using Adobe Flash. And by the year 2008, the success of all these tower defense browser games led to the first console/PC games, such as Defense Grid: The Awakening. Now that we are caught up on history, let's dive into our first review. The first game we're going to talk about today is Defense Grid: The Awakening. The game was made by Hidden Path Entertainment, and development started in 2007. The game originally had the title Last Stand. The goal of the company was to create a standard tower defense game that also included 3D graphics, high production values, and was available for direct download. Defense Grid runs on the Gamebryo engine and also uses the Scaleform GFX user interface. Because the game was officially released in 2008, the game graphics are a bit outdated. However, the recommended specs for the game are very low. And right now you can pick up the game for only about $10. Let's talk storyline. In Defense Grid, aliens are attacking the planet. It's the player's job to activate the dormant defense grid and stop the aliens from taking the power cores. The main character, Entity, is a computer with human-like qualities that just wants to protect his homeworld.
Ah, the aliens are back, are they? Yes, well, we knew this day might come, and so it has. Precisely why I was downloaded into this computer 412,806 days ago, to assist you.
The setting of the game takes place in a distant future. The level design originally was set in an urban environment ravaged by war. However, the developers decided to go with a more original idea and went with ancient ruins instead. Gameplay. The player must defend the cores from aliens by surviving wave after wave of attack. A level can be won if at least one core remains at the end of the final wave. The key strategy is good tower placement, using a combination of 10 different towers. Towers can range from flame turrets, which have short range but can hit multiple targets, to mortar turrets, which fire slowly and have a large attack radius. Positioning these towers where they can hit enemies more frequently is crucial. The more aliens you destroy in the game, the more resources you gain. These resources can not only buy towers, they can also be used to upgrade them as well. It is important to find a balance when spending resources on turrets and upgrades. Having all level 1, or green turrets, will not be enough to beat each level. However, having too few of the fully upgraded towers can have a similar outcome. Each time you successfully beat a level, you're given a score based on how many cores you managed to save. The option of going back to beat your old score provides some replay value. Game modes. Aside from the story mode, each time you complete a level, you unlock other game modes or challenges. The story challenge mode, for example, toughens up the alien monsters. Other game modes, such as 10 Tower Limit and 10k Resources Challenge, have the player beat the level under confined resources and options. DLC. If you can't get enough of the game, there are several options for downloadable content. In 2010, the map packs Defense Grid Borderlands and Resurgent became available. The packs introduced 8 more campaign maps and 4 challenge mode maps. And more recently, in December of 2011, Defense Grid U Monster released for the PC and Xbox 360. This version featured GLaDOS, the character from the hit game Portal. So I think it's about time to go over the pros and cons of this game. For the pro side, the game is a solid tower defense game. There's tons of replay value and different game modes. You gotta love the downloadable content. The game runs on most PCs and on the Xbox 360. And lastly, the game has a cheap price. As for the cons, the game isn't the top of the line as far as graphics go. Also, there's no multiplayer options. I can't really see any other flaws to the game. Assuming you like the genre, it's a good buy. Alrighty, that concludes the first review. The second game we're going to be looking at is Dungeon Defenders. Dungeon Defenders was developed by Trendy Entertainment, released October 19th of 2011. The game runs on the Unreal Engine 3. The game has been a commercial success, selling over 250,000 copies on the first 2 weeks of release. This game will cost you roughly $15 or $45 if you buy a 4-pack on Steam. That's about $4 off each copy if you want to buy in bulk, maybe for you and your friends or family. The storyline.
Long ago, brave warriors across the realm stood together against an immortal evil known as the Old Ones. In the wake of this struggle, the champions locked away the power of the Old Ones inside Eternia crystals. Recently, the realm's heroes, called to a faraway crusade, have left their younger kin to tend the castle and its chores. Bored with their dreary duties, and imagining action and adventure, the pupils accidentally unleash an ancient force that has long been dormant. Now these heroes in training will have to grow up quickly. Together they will defend the Eternia crystals against those who would seek to resurrect the ancient evils.
The way Dungeon Defenders sets up the storyline is it primarily shows several cutscenes after you defeat major bosses and events happen. The goal of the game is to work together and guard the Eternia crystals at all cost. The game takes place in a cartoony fantasy world. Lighthearted and full of pun jokes, Dungeon Defenders pokes fun at all types of popular games and fantasy references. The graphics aren't top of the line. However, the more simple the graphics are, the easier it will be for developers to consistently publish new downloadable content. The gameplay. In Dungeon Defenders, there are 4 playable classes that each scale in difficulty. The class options are Apprentice, Squire, Huntress, and Monk. Each class brings unique towers and traps to the battlefield. Being a cooperative game, combining towers and traps with other players can really benefit the team in effective strategy. Although the game is featured on multiplayer, you can actually play by yourself too. The solo missions in the game do generate certain problems as far as difficulty. For example, the Monk class is generally a support or damage per second class. The Monk's traps, or auras for his case, help the team more than they block or hurt enemies. So playing a Monk alone can be very difficult. In each level of the game, the players must decide where they want to build their defenses during the build phase. Crystal can be collected from chests and monsters to allow players to build and repair, as well as upgrade their traps and towers. In each level, there's a maximum amount of towers that can be built, so players must plan wisely. There are 4 basic difficulty modes, catering to the more casual players and the more hardcore players. Similar to Defense Grid, Dungeon Defenders also offers a challenge mode. Some examples are Warping Core, No Towers, and The Great Turkey Hunt, a gameplay mode where you must kill a certain amount of turkeys before the time runs out. Customization. Dungeon Defenders is heavily focused on customization. Players are allowed to change their color palette on their character and crystals. Trendy Entertainment has introduced several costume choices through new DLC as well. The game also has thousands of unique weapons, armor, and other loot that drops from monsters and chests. You can also utilize the game store to buy and sell, using the mana you've picked up as money. The store offers new gear, upgrades, and even pets. Not finding a weapon or item that suits you? You can try a player-run shop, and you may find a really cheap deal. DLC. Dungeon Defenders is also huge on downloadable content. The game has only been out 3 months, and several DLC packs have already been released. There's free content, such as the Halloween-themed challenge mode and a holiday extravaganza, both which featured a map and costume unlocks. And for $12.99 you can also buy the Lost Eternia shards. This will get you 4 campaign maps and a new difficulty. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons to the game. Well, the pros to Dungeon Defenders is it's got a ton of content. It's also got a really good customization system, cheap price, a very good multiplayer system, and it's a blend of an action RPG and a tower defense. As for the cons of the game, I haven't really talked about any of Dungeon Defender's flaws. There are several bugs, and there's server downtime. Also, sometimes the camera angles are wonky, and unfortunately, single player mode requires a lot of experience grinding to complete some of the later missions. All in all, both games are great despite some flaws. If you're looking for a single player game, then I'd recommend Defense Grid. But if you love multiplayer games, Dungeon Defenders is a great choice. But both games are fairly cheap, so why not buy both? Thank you for watching, and go out there and spread the word about tower defense games.